if I speak loudly, maybe you can hear me rather than hold this in my hand. Is that okay? What an honor and a privilege for me to be here today for the UK-DRC Business Partnership Day. And we are very, very keen, very anxious that we develop the partnership between us, UK and DRC. And this is the subject I'm going to cover today. But nice to see distinguished people, some of the friends I know from the past, leaders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, who embody the spirit of enterprise and success for UK or success for DRC as well. So for me, it's an honor and a pleasure to explore the wide scale of opportunities for trade and economic development between the United Kingdom and the DRC. I served as Prime Minister's First Envoy, and she quite rightly said, for Uganda, Rwanda, and DRC up until the last election. And unfortunately, we, the Conservative Party, we had our Prime Minister of Kenyan origin. Unfortunately, we lost him of Ugandan origin, by the way. Yeah. We lost the election, and therefore we are no longer in power, and we have a new trade envoy covering DRC. I continue to work for all parliamentary groups you mentioned earlier on DRC, and that's very important to engage parliamentarians with DRC. DRC is very much an unknown place for many British people. They know East Africa, Kenya, Uganda is all fine, Tanzania, Rwanda as well. But DRC is something that people are not that used to. And myself being, as I said earlier, being African born myself, please forgive me for the bias, on Africa. Post-Brexit, I truly believe that building stronger trade and diplomatic links with Africa should be Britain's top priority to secure not only our nation's prosperity, but also the economic future of the African continent. Africa has grown more democratic in the past 30 years. Multi-party elections are common, parliament often flawed. Opposition parties are gaining ground. Most leaders leave office peacefully rather than in coups, which took place in the 70s, including Uganda, where Idi Amin took over elected government of Milton Obote. So politics is becoming more competitive. There's free press and open society. But we must remember that Africa is a young democracy. Democracy can take as much as 200-300 years to mature. It's as young as 40, 50, 60 years. So it will take time for any democracy to mature, but it is in the right direction, despite many countries criticizing some African countries. But it takes time, and we will let that happen. So despite its flaws, democracy is still the best system of government invented by humans, but like everything else, it takes a lot of thought, effort, and dedication to make it work. We in Africa have not yet got there, but we are on the way. So as I say, it will take time. DRC is a young democracy. We are the architects of economic bridges that connect shores to distant markets. We are trade envoys for trade, what ambassadors are for diplomacy. So during my time as a trade envoy, my interest was trade. I personally come from a business background. The ambassadors and high commissioners in DRC, in Uganda, Kenya, the main interest is diplomacy and soft power. And there is a difference between a businessman and an ambassador. We can work for 10 days without drinking. They can drink for 10 days without working. So that's the difference between us and them. So this trade envoy program, we have 18 trade envoys covering Africa, which is good news, something that was started by David Cameron when he was a Prime Minister. In fact, if I just talk very briefly, let me touch very briefly on Africa, and then I'll talk very briefly Rwanda and Uganda, and come back to our main interest, which is UK-DRC business partnership. Africa is a huge continent, in fact bigger than Russia, India, Europe, and America put together. 1.3 billion people, that population in 30 years' time will double. So a quarter of the world population will be Africa, with $100 trillion worth of minerals, 30 trillion alone in DRC. So everything is underground, whilst overground people are poor, and we need to work on that. This is our objective here, meeting today, what can we do to make that happen. Our UK share of trade not long ago was nearly 30%, today it's less than 4%. For two reasons, because we ignored Africa, and secondly, we didn't have political will. And we still don't have political will. You see, events like these will help to kick our parliamentarians and say, hold on, have some political will. Post-Brexit, Africa is a continent to look at. It's the next frontier for trade investment. If I just briefly talk about Uganda and Rwanda and DRC as well. In Rwanda, I was a trade envoy in the last 8-9 years. First thing I did, despite being a Tottenham supporter, I took Arsenal football team. And that was £30 million export to, without having to make anything, UK export to Rwanda. And then I was once with President Kagame and Museveni, and they were complaining about British Airways having stopped flying to Entebbe after 60 years. And those flights were always full. 60 years later, British Airways stopped flying because they sold the slope to Qataris. So I said, don't complain, start your own airlines. I'll get you the planes, I'll finance it, and we can fly, we can connect. The purpose is to connect. The more we connect, the better. So we sold planes to Uganda and Rwanda. We financed Rwanda. For the last 5 years, we have direct flight London, Kigali, London, and Heathrow Airport 7 days a week. Last month, I flew for the first time to Uganda by Uganda Airlines. We now have a 4 days a week flight from Gatwick to Entebbe. And the flight is always full. And I took this role as a trade envoy. I spoke to President Tshisekedi. I met him 3 times in the UK, once in Kinshasa. That we want to see direct flight London, Kinshasa, London. By connecting, we, for example, every morning at Heathrow Airport, we get 20 tons of fruit and veg from Kigali. And we get 10 tons every time Uganda Airline flies to Canary. This is fresh fruit, organic, expensive, high-value cheese, pineapples. And I remember seeing the pineapples packaged and going to Heathrow. I said, don't package it, slice it, chop it, fry it, and then package it. So added value comes to you. We don't have human resources, labor resources here to do all that work. We import people from abroad to work here. So now they're doing that, they're getting that added value. There's so much we can do, seriously. You are visionaries, you are business people, you love your country, you love your continent. Let's do something like this. By organizing this, do it more often. Even if you get one investor, once a year is good enough for us. So we took Rio Tinto, a mining company in Rwanda. I talked about the direct flight as well to Rwanda. In Uganda, we're building an international airport. We're doing some infrastructure work. We're doing 10 business parks to support Uganda to manufacturing in Uganda. We took British international investment. By the way, if you told you've got something to invest in with partnership and money, British international investment are good company to work with. The British companies, you do the work, they'll get active in your country and work with you. So they're doing green work to the tune of £1 billion in Uganda now, in partnership with the UK company. So there's so much we've done in energy, in solar panels, in infrastructure. And let me now say briefly about the DRC. DRC, historically or traditionally, not been a trading partner with UK. It's crucial that we understand the key role the region can play in our future. It's an untapped market. There are so much raw materials, both in terms of mining, $30 trillion, as I mentioned earlier. But DRC's culture is agriculture. 60% of people in DRC work in agriculture. Whatever you have to export from there to here, we buy it. You go in Sainsbury's or Tesco's after 4 p.m., there's no fruit and veg left. I get my mogo in Matoki, by the way. Ugandan, by the way, to eat here on a regular basis. So we must strengthen our ties to recognize that DRC is the next frontier for trade and investment for UK companies. It is time for the UK to step up whilst we were facing domestic issues, China was stepping up into Africa. So we must create the political will. And hence we must do more of this, preferably in Parliament. And invite politicians to listen to us and say, hold on, politicians, please, can you let us goodwill? All we need is a smile on your face. In fact, I was asked by Margaret Thatcher, so 45 years when I was working for her, I said, what can we do for the Indians? I said, we Indians, African Indians, all we need is a smile. So if you smile at us, we are yours. We joined the party. And we selected Rishi as to be an MP. He became an MP and a Prime Minister of somebody of Kenyan origin. So trade and economic growth between the DRC and the United Kingdom is crucial. DRC is a country with enormous potential and can become true beating heart of Africa. It's the richest in the world, second largest, we mentioned earlier. $30 trillion worth of minerals, 70% of the world's cobalt, which is key for car batteries, mobile phones and defense. Its entire mining sector is key driver for the country's economy with vast reserves of copper, cobalt, gold and diamond. It can be a great driver for the country's economy. Mix that high value with low value agriculture, and it can make a big difference. In addition to these raw minerals, it's important to recognize the untapped hydroelectric potential, which displays clear opportunities for any business in the energy sector. So huge potential in the energy sector and the infrastructure sector. I mean, I must commend Britain. During the colonial time, look at all the British colonies. One thing British did was build roads and railways. In DRC, you can't go from one town to another without no roads. Forget the railways. And we need to build this infrastructure to make it happen. The Ghana is doing it now. If you look at the roads from Kigali to other towns, he's not interested in developing Kigali anymore. He's developing other towns within Rwanda. And that's what we need to do as well in the DRC. And during my, in fact, we must continue collaborating to unlock the DRC's vast potential, for example, through the establishment of UK-DRC Sovereign Wealth Fund. I think we need to create a Sovereign Wealth Fund, preferably with VII partnership, that we can use that fund to develop DRC. In April of last year, I led a trade delegation consisting of 26 UK companies to the DRC. During the mission, the DRC government signed 3 agreements with the UK companies. The first with Westminster Group was 142 million to take over the security of DRC 5 international airports, and the second in agriculture, public-private MOU. In fact, one of the problems DRC has is scholarship. The gold and national resources are taken away from DRC to buy with other countries. And we have now set up a security system. The UK company set up a security system. This can be protected in the 5 airports. And it's self-funding. People who travel in these planes will pay for it. Passengers pay for it. And then we signed the agriculture MOU worth 215 million. Finally, Global Guessing Group signed an MOU to invest 100 million in medical oxygen and IPG. On the problem with the COVID was getting oxygen for the people. We will have that now made in DRC. And I work with the Post to encourage UK for Finance to review the approach to DRC. We have 2.5 billion facility for Rwanda, 2 billion for Uganda from UK for Finance. We have nothing for DRC. And I'm working with the UK for Finance to establish some facility for them so we can support UK companies to invest in DRC. I also supported the private investor, Gemco, to make up to 5 million available for projects in the DRC. That was signed by your Minister of Finance here in Parliament, and that's a 5 million pound of private funding available to DRC for projects in DRC. So there's so much potential for all of us to work together to make it happen. And DRC remains the extreme catalyst for economic growth and trade within Africa, and we must work to tap on it. At the same time, I work with DRC ministers to make improvements in the process, in how sometimes this process in Africa is very bureaucratic, partly because of democracy. It goes to every 8 different departments before it's approved. And we want to speed up that process as fast as we can. In fact, I read in the paper yesterday that India has the same problem. So Prime Minister Modi has said to all the regional governments, can you speed up this process? It's too slow for a liking. And China, that is very good. Things happen so fast, so quick. And people in Parliament, when they're saying, China is, isn't it? That's what China is there because you're not there. What can African countries do? Leaders do. They want infrastructure investment. Whoever comes will have it. Please come, China, come and do it. And I think you would commend China for able to do it, able to finance, able to come there and talk to you and give you a smile. We haven't done that. We need to do that. We need to do more of that. And by being trade envoy, you can see the number of investments we have made both in Uganda and Rwanda, and how the Ugandan economy and Rwandan economy has transformed. Those two countries have the highest GDP annually now, just over 6.8% compared to other African countries. So I think I'll stop, then I'll be happy later on to answer any questions you have. I've said enough. Forgive me if I've said too much. And please continue what you're doing. We need to do more and more of this because we care for Africa, we care for DRC, we care for Rwanda, we care for Uganda. Our brothers and sisters living in poverty when they shouldn't be living in poverty. And we can make it happen. God has blessed us by living here and giving us the opportunity to progress. And one good example is visas. The Minister for Business was supposed to be here. He didn't get the visas. Can you imagine? And a minister in Africa owns a diplomatic passport. Somebody with diplomatic passport can't get visas. And that's what we should lobby and campaign with our MPs and tell them. I've done this. I've carried out extensive thing in the last government to make visas easier. In Rwanda, for example, they give us a list of 250 people. If they apply for visa, they'll get it. The ministers, the people working in the defense, working for prominent business people, they need to get it. So DRC needs to give a list of the people, all the ministers and other business people. They come to UK, they want to come to UK, the visas are made available easily. On that note, thank you.